Hey there folks, and welcome to this video. And here's the general notes where I fire off the week by talking about what's going on in the world of motorsports, as well as giving you a bit of a channel update. So without further ado, let's get into that first portion. And coming up on the channel over the next few days, you can expect some predictions reviews, a Christmas video, and some more IndyCar reviews as well. I'm hoping to get the playoffs debate video around sometime this week, and potentially a preview for the 2026 Dakar Rally, because that starts at the start of the new year. Over on the other channel, CSRE, you could expect a video too as well, but do expect the daily shorts to continue as well. I think I still have like a month of them before I actually have to make something new. And even then, I'm probably going to be backing up more and more with things that come up from different races that I do. Hopefully, I'll also get my best drivers video out, but I'm thinking that's going to be one of my last ones for 2025. I'm going through and updating the ratings. I've just finished covering, well, getting all the F1, WRC ones in there, IndyCar, Formula E, then it's Super Formula Supercar, W2RC, then NASCAR. I'm surprised I didn't do much for, but luckily with a lot of them I could just remember it at the top of my head. WEC is going to be a big one, IMS is going to be a big one. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out in the end. I've seen the Autosports Top 50. It'll be kind of like a response video to that in a way. In fact, in some ways it may end up being, especially if I push the final couple of IndyCar reviews into the new year. Anyways, let's talk about the real world of motorsport, starting off with WRC. Because two big things have happened in terms of WRC for the 2027 rule cycle. One is confirmation. We have this new confirmation called Project Rally 1. Not to be confused with the Rally 1 rule cycle that is the current generation. Instead, it's this Benelux manufacturer, led by Yves Maton, who was the team principal of Citroën towards the end of their WRC run. I think he had a stint in the FIA as well, Yves Maton. He left around the time of 2017, around the time that rule cycle kicked in. But yeah, it comes from this this other manufacturer that he works with as well. And what we can expect with the idea of Project Rally 1 is that, yeah, it's Lionel Hansen that he goes alongside. They could use some of the cars that they run a lot. So, for instance, they run Porsches, and in fact, the reveal image had what appeared to be a body of a kind of Panamera, Taycan, or a Cayman, even. So we could even see a Porsche body style, and with the FIA having unveiled these new body shapes that they could expect to see on WRC27. What I found interesting was you had one that looked like a Honda, looked a bit like a Civic, one that looked a bit like a Porsche, and I can't remember if they showed a third one that looked a bit like a, well, Hyundai, or a Volvo in a way. Which then brings me on to talking about another thing, and this is a sort of 3-for-1 in a way, because there's been rumours for a while that M-Sport may leave Ford. M-Sport's primary objective is to stay with Ford. I'd recommend listening to Spin the Rally Pod. They did an interview with Rich Milner that was part of Club Dirtfish, they then released in the main feed, where he talks about their ambition is still to work with Ford, but obviously what Project Rally 1 will be doing coming into the sport is coming in as a bit of a competitor to the M-Sport model. Because M-Sport benefit in a way from the constructor thing because they've always been a constructor. There's various levels of manufacturer support over the years. They were properly works, I think, for the Mark II Focus. So 2006 through 2010. And then I think technically they were for the start of the Fiesta cycles. I think 2012 when Solberg retired, they stopped being a works team. Because that's when they become like the Qatar team. And then I think, was it 2017 and 2018? started for what we now know as WRC Plus, it was a works team again. I think at the end of 2018 it became privateer. So this constructor thing means that there's more people who are going to be competing for M Sport's kind of corner of the market. And the rumour is, with a lack of Ford backing, they may look elsewhere. Now, M Sport have done a lot to kind of rubbish that. Also, the fact that they still work with Ford for W2RC. But they have worked with other manufacturers before, quite notably the GT3 for Bentley. Now, the current rumour links up with... That was a pun not intended. Lincoln Co., otherwise known as what was kind of the Polestar Volvo Racing. Because Geely, who own all of those brands, as well as the likes of Lotus and Proton, put as part of their brand objective for Lincoln Co., rally. Now, Chinese rallying is its own beast altogether. Like, there have been, I'm not even kidding, sports action movies released in China for a Chinese audience about the Chinese Rally Championship, where there's a VW Polo that was very much performance-wise, even in the official thing, in the official series, equivalent to World Rally cars. I think, didn't David Higgins pick up, I think it was David Higgins, all the Higgins brothers, picked up national championships in China driving for Subaru. But Lincoln Co. potentially getting into rallying could be over in China, or it could be, this rumour, over in M Sport. Be interesting. Volvo used to have Ford links. But, yeah. M Sport have said it's more likely that they won't have a car for 2027 without a full works program, so they'd likely run the Rally 2 in 27 and have a full WRC27 spec car for 2028. But it is a bit of a relief to see a manufacturer looking to get in. Because we already had Toyota signed up. Technically, we now already have 2 constructors signed up. And I don't really matter. It doesn't matter that much to me, the difference between manufacturer and constructor. In fact, it's quite nice to have that distinction. Because it might give the constructors a bit more credit. Like, imagine if ProDrive carried the name instead of Subaru. Rally Art instead of Mitsubishi. Was it Motorsport Development? Was that the name of the lot who had the Accent program for Hyundai? Be quite nice. Quite nice for those outfits to get the proper credit, because, I mean, they did back in the day, but these days we don't take the time to explain it properly. And it also brings it in line with things like F1. Anyways, speaking of F1, the engine loopholes. This is something that came to my attention when it hit news feeds on Friday. The 2 manufacturers have supposedly been told off for exploiting engine loopholes. These 2 manufacturers we're given to believe are Red Bull Powertrains and Mercedes. Mercedes, who, bear in mind, everybody was saying these are going to be the front runners when it comes to the engine formula for 2026. Mercedes, who will be supplying almost quite literally half the grid, because in addition to Mercedes themselves, you've got what Alpine is switching across. I know they've lost Aston Martin, but they're still going to have McLaren as well. And, well, Williams. So yeah, a third of the grid. But it could be half the teams affected, because remember Red Bull Powertrains, Red Bull, and Racing Bulls. So let me explain. I'm going to paraphrase what John Noble was put in for the race. In the previous rule set, the compression ratio for a cylinder was limited to 18.0. They dropped that compression ratio to 16.0. Now, what that means is how much power can be produced, essentially. The FIA has changed the wording around these rules because it was originally set at a particular temperature, basically when the engines are cold. That's how they were going to measure it. They weren't going to measure it when the engines were hot or in an operating window. They were just going to measure it at cold. Which creates a bunch of interesting situations. Which is why manufacturers could exploit it. But the FIA has closed the loophole, and it's because the teams agreed to let the FIA put in this rule Partially because they were annoyed by Mercedes with DAS. Partially because they were annoyed with the tracing point, or the pink Mercedes as they called it, the RP20. Partly because they were also annoyed by the Ferrari allegedly burning their own oil to make the engine more powerful thing. So this is the case of the teams wanting to go against the competition, and in some cases seemingly shooting themselves in the foot. Red Bull benefited from a lot of these things, and now supposedly they're suffering for it. Mind you, for Mercedes, just one knock after another, apparently. You know, it's getting to the point that these engineers need to have law degrees as well to be able to understand the rulebook, to go, okay, it says we could do this, it says we can't do this, but it doesn't say we can't do this. I like those things in sport, in motorsport, in design, because it really shows where the competition is. It really shows where the battle of the brains is. It gives you such wonderful things such as the exhaust blown diffuser that Newey pioneered in, 2011? Amongst other teams. The trick diffuser systems that Brawn had in 2009. Williams' failed experiment with flywheel KERS for 2009. And subsequently Nissan's failed experiment for it for the GT-R LM. And yeah, even the Lotus thing, what was it, a kind of blown front wing diffuser kind of thing, where the exhaust gases would go out the front. Should it be the team's fault that the FIA wrote the rules in a certain way? I don't know. I like the idea of closing up those loopholes, but I'd like the idea more if they were like, okay, we've recognised an issue for 26, but we can't really expect you to spend the money to change it. So 2027 or 2028. And that might annoy the engine manufacturers a bit. It might annoy the other ones. They're like, hey, we did plan to exploit this loophole. But I think it's the best way to reward the genius whilst also then having the spirit of the rules maintained in the long term. Because the whole thing is spirit of the rules versus letter of the law. And I see both sides. I do. But I'd much rather see, oh my god, this is a brilliant idea. How are they going to replicate this next year? Whilst the other teams are already working within those confines and don't need to worry about it. Like one of the things I think, was it for 22, they switched to E10. And there was a rumour that Alpine are really going to struggle with the switch to E10 fuel. I think it was, because it might have even been 2023. The WRC had already gone fully sustainable with its fuel. But yeah, I can see why this happened, but if this ends up affecting the running order for next year, and we see those Mercedes-powered teams right at the bottom of the order, I will be disappointed. Anyways, some upbeat news to end this with. Grégoire Munster, M Sport driver for the last 2 years in WRC, will be in a Rally 1 car for Rally Monte Carlo. A week after the Dakar, he's flying back to Europe to compete in Rally Monte Carlo. He's doing a Seb Loeb. Seb Loeb did that and he went on to win. Now, I'm not expecting Greg Munster to just out of the box suddenly in the rally where he won his first stage this year, I think, end up winning his first rally. That would be almost unheard of in terms of WRC form, especially because he'd be going up against the likes of Ogier and Neuville, who between them have won, I think is now the past 11 or past 12, or 11 of the past 12, because Loeb in 2022, Rally Monte Carlos. Like, frankly, their hit rate is absurd. I think it is actually 11 of the past 12, because I think it's 2014 through 2025, with the exception of 2022. But yeah, I haven't seen yet whether it's been confirmed if it's going to be Serdaridis' car, because Jordan Serdaridis, a long-term backer of Greg Munster, owns a Ford Puma Rally 1. But yeah, Munster will come from being a co-driver to Serdaridis with a Raptor to driving with his co-driver Louis Luca at the Monte. I hope he does well, I really do. He could be somebody who could be quite dependable. So if he's entered manufacturer points, he could just go in. Possibly, if everything falls into place for him, get a top 5 even. Don't want to put that pressure on him, but it is possible. Just score some solid points whilst the Irish duo go on and, well, John Armstrong finds his feet. Josh McAlean tries to see if there's any newfound pace in his second year in the car. Anyway, those are my thoughts. As always, thanks so much for watching and joining, folks. And yeah, if I don't see you before, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, have a Happy New Year. But I do hope to see you before. I do have videos coming out every day. But yeah, hope this period goes nicely and smoothly, and if it's a tough time of the year for you, I hope that it could be peaceful at some points. Yeah? Look after yourselves. It's awesome for me to sit down and make content like this every day, every week, every month, every year. For now, 11.5 years. Thanks for watching. And yeah. Till next time. Goodbye for now.